My name's Damon Giddings. I'm one of the Northern European sales engineers for Acronis, and the purpose of the webinar today is just to give you it's essentially broken down into three parts. First of all, there's a brief presentation. It's a few slides. It just tells you a little bit about Acronis, a little bit about backup, and a little bit about disaster recovery. And the second element is sort of a brief demo of backup, and also how quickly you can onboard an Office 365 client, for example, which is just wonderful to watch. It's so supremely easy. And the third part is a disaster recovery demo, basically just to give you insight into how to utilize the Acronis backup disaster recovery add-on for 12.5. So first of all, we're going to jump into the slide deck. Okay, just a little overview about Acronis for those that may not have heard that much about us. So we're a Swiss-Singaporean company, the principle of that being that we are neutral in the world. We have no allegiance to any political bodies as such. We are very much a global business and the world leader in cyber protection. We were founded way back in 2003, and some of you may know us previously from our disk imaging technologies. Needless to say, the business has evolved significantly from that time. We're expanding rapidly. We have designs on being the absolute market leader across all backup technologies, and certainly from a cyber protection perspective as well. And the cyber protection being obviously the protection of all aspects of your data, from backup through disaster recovery, and then providing mechanisms to protect against ransomware as well, to actually further enhance the protection of your data. This little flag here on planet Earth, and this little flag here on Mars, yeah, I don't thank our marketing team for this particular slide. It is obviously suggesting that we're out in the solar system, and to be honest, there's a degree of truth in that. The Mars rover recently had an issue, and Acronis actually back up the actual software on the rover, and it was actually recovered using Acronis backup. So it is a very real thing. We are actually out in the solar system on Mars. So that was a bit of an eye-opener for me in particular. So Acronis, we're rapidly accelerating and expanding. 30% overall growth in 2019, 200% cloud growth in 2019, and we're on target for 40% accelerating growth in 2020. So we are very much a company forging ahead with our product suite, which ranges from backup, disaster recovery, and we have a ream of other solutions coming as well, which for those that hang around at the end of this session, I'm free to sort of give you some insight into sort of some of the other technologies that are on our roadmap. So Acronis, global leader in cyber protection. We've got 25 plus offices in 18 countries, customers in excess of 150 countries. We're way in excess of 5,000 petabytes of data now under Acronis protection. So that's exploding. Certainly this particular reference is from midway through last year, and we've added many more petabytes since then. So that number is way in excess of 5,000. Now, in terms of employees, we have 1,300 employees around the world, and very much in step with our approach to developing our solutions and bringing new products to the market. 60% of that 1,300 plus employee count is actually in research and development of our product suite. So very aggressive targets in what we're doing there. And in terms of who we partner with, we're 50,000 plus partners around the world. And in terms of the end users, business customers, 500,000 plus, and 5 million consumer products out there as well. We still utilize our disk imaging technologies, which is called True Image, which some of you may well be familiar with, and that is very much where Acronis was born. And in terms of those that we partner with and protect, it's 79% of the top 100 most valuable brands, and 75% of the Tech Top 20. And here's just a small sample of some of our partners and users. Yeah, we're in all sorts of industries, in all sorts of verticals. There's no real limit. And some of you may also see that we are out partnering with sporting companies as well. For example, within football, it's Manchester City, Arsenal. We're in Formula One as well with Williams and Racing Point, and they use our technologies as well. It's not just purely a sponsorship arrangement. They're actually using our artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies, as well as our backup and disaster recovery technologies. Cloud data centers around the world. Again, this is more to do with the cloud offering within Acronis 12.5. We can leverage the Acronis cloud and store your client's data there. Again, we've got disaster recovery functionality in the cloud as well, which I'll touch on shortly as well. But in terms of coverage, you can see that the little icons with the white A, those are the actual Acronis DCs, but we also partner with Google, Azure, and Amazon. Right, okay, without further ado, Acronis Backup, secure and reliable backup. Again, I won't dwell on this slide for too long. I mean, most of you here will probably be very aware of the importance of backup, but as much as anything today, it's not just having a secure backup, it's also about how you protect that data as well, the actual backup data from cyber crimes such as ransomware and crypto mining attacks. You can see there's obviously the headline activities of 50% of hard drives die within 5 years. That's obviously a very real threat. 90% of the companies are out of business without disaster recovery, which we'll touch on and do a brief demo on as well. And the speed at which data is growing. Data is obviously, I mean, we all know that it exists on your smartphones, your tablets, and so on. You're utilizing cloud. Data is exploding. You save pictures. I mean, that data can be WhatsApp pictures, Snapchat, sort of Facebook content as well that you've downloaded, and just general sort of personal content. So the explosion in data is massive, and to actually analyze that data as well, if you look at Facebook platforms and other corporate platforms and how they analyze that data, the analytical data as well is also exploding. So it's just this perpetual and sort of continual explosion in data. So Acronis Backup, why backup with Acronis? Essentially, we are regarded as the most secure form of backup out there. There are kind of 3 elements to our product that we like to focus on: easy, efficient, and secure. Easy, it's easy to use, it's easy to navigate the portal, and you'll see that in the demo a little later. It's easy to recover virtual machines from our instant restore technology in Hyper-V and VMware environments. Enables you to spin up a backup into those live environments, minimizing downtime, and you can also do what we call finalizing. And when you finalize that machine in those environments, it means it's there, it's permanent, and then you can carry on doing your backups, and you're back in business very, very quickly indeed. Accelerate recovery of up to 2 times by flexibly restoring servers, and that can be to bare metal or to similar hardware. Again, that comes back to the root of our imaging technology, so you can go from physical to virtual or Azure to Amazon. It really doesn't matter. The product is as flexible as you need it to be. And reducing the recovery times of VMs, again, our proprietary technology means that it enables you to compress the actual time frames in which your data is backed up. And efficiency, you can save money on infrastructure. We have 2 iterations of Acronis 12.5. We have the on-site entity, and a lot of people still go for that solution of installing 12.5, Acronis Backup 12.5 in their local environments on a server and backing up locally and or to the cloud or to tape. And we also have running alongside it now what we refer to as the web console. And this is a Backup 12.5 hosted service in our cloud. So there's no need to install that software on site. The only thing you would need to do is download agents, protect any workloads. So again, it's even more straightforward and efficient to deploy. And again, efficiency around using the actual portal itself. Again, you'll get to see how easy it is. I mean, it's very intuitive, very easy, very clear. So you do not need specialist admins basically to actually monitor and manage your backups. It's very, very straightforward. So from an end user perspective, it's streaming. And of course, there's cost savings to be had if you utilize cloud storage. There's still so many people out there using tape, and tape has its place, or will do for a number of years yet. But there are obviously, it's a very mechanical entity. There's reliability question marks. You have offsite storage, you have data retrieval, also all those challenges with tape backup that with cloud storage merely go away. So this is certainly an angle that we need to be pitching for our end users. And secure. There's a lot of people out there that still use multiple products to protect their environments, and they've kind of inherited or they've got legacy applications and use a mishmash of different backup solutions. Now, one of the advantages, again, of Acronis is that we do cover 20+ platforms, and they're physical and virtual clouds, and we can also back up mobile devices, whether those are tablets or mobile phones. And that's the usual suspects of Mac, iOS, and Android. And incidentally, Microsoft Windows for those people stuck in the past, still using Microsoft phones. And eliminating ransomware attacks. What's that about? We have a technology, again, that I'll touch on a little later. Within the agents that you can deploy in a workload, there's something called active protection. And that actively protects against ransomware and crypto mining attacks. It works supremely well, and I can do a little demo later on as well if we have time, just showing you how effective that is. And again, we have something called blockchain-based technologies using Ethereum blockchain. It's our Notary product, and that enables you to authenticate data as well. And files and folders basically, and it's demonstrating immutability of the data. And what that means is, certainly from a backup perspective, if you're involved in legal challenges or disputes, or your partners are, or your end users, you can demonstrate the authenticity of that data when it was backed up, and also the authenticity of the data within those backups, such as contracts and so on and so forth. So you can prove that historically they existed and so on, and that they haven't been forged or tampered with. So pretty much lastly on the backup slide, again, this is pretty much what we've just been talking about from a backup 12.5 perspective. It is a hybrid cloud architecture if you wish it to be. You can have a completely on-premise model, including local storage and then to tape, or you can utilize cloud solutions as well. And in terms of where you deploy it, you can actually deploy it in any cloud, whether that's public or private. You can utilize our cloud with our web console. There really are no limits. The product is that flexible. And in terms of the workloads you can protect, anything in the Microsoft ecosystem, and virtual machines, physical machines, we basically protect it all, essentially, and whether that's applications, the usual suspects, SharePoint, Exchange, and so on, and mobile devices, as I mentioned previously. Virtual workloads, we're agnostic. Hyper-V and VMware, yes, we do have more effective integration with those in the form of agentless backup, but in terms of any virtual platform, we can back up any virtual platform as well. And in terms of Hyper-V and VMware, we can also back up the host, which is quite unique in the marketplace. Something people overlook, if your host goes down, what's the quickest and most effective way to get it back up? Well, it's from a backup. And again, we are pretty much the only vendor that does that. And it's a great feature when you're talking to end users about virtualization. And in terms of where you store that data, what are the options? Any storage in terms of cloud, again, we're agnostic to which cloud you use. We have technologies that enable you to put it in Azure, Amazon, Google. We have people on the far side of the world using Alibaba, for example. There really is no limits. And in terms of on-premise, that can be disk, it can be tape, it can be NAS, it can be SAN. We're completely agnostic, really. We have full functionality support all of those destinations. And in terms of recoveries, in essence, in a nutshell, we're very, very granular. You can drive down and drill right down into a mailbox, for example, and I'll demonstrate this shortly. In terms of system recoveries, we can do bare metal recoveries, for example, as we mentioned, using virtual media. That can be physicals, virtuals physicals, doesn't matter. We have active restore and instant restore. Active restore enables you to, if you've got a server that's run an update, for example, and it's having problems, you can actually revert back to a previous backup, and all of the active restore will basically enable you just to restore the changes from your last backup. So it doesn't do a complete system restore, it just identifies the changes, so you can go back to yesterday's backup, for example, and it's very, very quick indeed. We have instant restore, which I mentioned earlier, and that just spins up a backup in Hyper-V or VMware, and you can finalize it and make it live. A great process indeed to get you up and running very, very quickly. In terms of dissimilar hardware, any variation there, obviously you could go on with that one. And we also have physical data shipment services as well. So if you have an end user with a large amount of data, sort of terabytes and terabytes, and their uplinks aren't great, you can use the physical data shipment service basically to upload that data onto a disk. So it can be a SATA disk, a USB disk locally. It's in essence the initial backup, so the full system backup. And then what you do is you send that to the DC of your choice, whether it's a partner, if you're using cloud recovery, storage, sorry. You can send that to our cloud, a partner cloud, and what you can do is just plug that in and then pump that straight up into the respective cloud. Once it's synced, the normal incremental backups would carry on after that point, and it's brilliant, it's seamless. So within 24 hours or so, you could be up and running even with very, very large amounts of data. It's a fantastic service. And cloud disaster recovery as well is an option for us. And again, that works really well, and I'll demonstrate that shortly as well. And lastly, the very last slide for backup, I promise you, 21 platforms protected. Again, you can see all the usual suspects. Jumped ahead. All the usual suspects, anything from G Suite, Office 365, Hyper-V, SQL, the works. And obviously you can see here, it can be EC2 instances on Amazon. It can be all sorts of things. We cover Oracle, Red Hat virtualization, Linux, KVM. Yeah, the list goes on. I won't exhaustively go through that. And I mentioned ransomware earlier on. Now, this is key at the moment. It is our active protection technology. It's highly regarded in the marketplace and within the industry, cyber protection industry. And again, you can kind of Google this to sort of validate that. And what active protection does, it sits in the agent on the workloads, and it protects against ransomware and crypto mining attacks, basically. And as you can see, it utilizes artificial intelligence and machine learning. So it basically sits on your system for about a week, learning what it identifies as the normal behavior of your system. And then it profiles that. So anything out with that looks suspicious, or it will actually stop that service if you want it to. And furthermore, it can also stop that service and revert any changes that have been made in between detection and stopping the service as well. So it's seamless, and all you would do then is get a notification that there was an attempted ransomware attack and what has occurred, basically. And obviously you can take further steps to identify how that attack was initiated, whether it's from an email or so on. But as you can see, our technology has essentially protected against 200,000 unique ransomware attacks across our product set. So it's pretty phenomenal. It does work, and very highly regarded in the marketplace. And this is a very quick schematic on how it works. Basically, it's obviously actively protecting files. So what it does is, as I just mentioned, it detects the attack, stops the attacks, and reverts basically any changes, any encrypted files back. And we can see that a little later as well. And finally, in terms of the slides, disaster recovery. Now, this is an add-on for 12.5. and it works brilliantly. You can see how quick, again, later in my demo, you'll see how easy it is to deploy, essentially. It works supremely well. It's easy. All you need is the entire machine backup. It does need to be in the Acronis cloud to function, but once it's there, you can essentially, from enabling disaster recovery through to spinning up a disaster recovery server, you can do it in less than 5 minutes. It's quite extraordinary. And anybody that has experience with disaster recovery will be amazed, really. There's a traditional perspective around disaster recovery that you need to ship servers to site, you need your backups, you need to get tapes from storage, you need to catalog those tapes, then recover those servers, and so on and so forth. So all of that goes away. With this solution, basically, there is absolutely no need for you to ship hardware to site. We spin it up in our cloud, and if you still have your site, assuming nothing serious has happened to your site, you can basically connect that server spun up in our cloud to your location over a secure layer 2 VPN. It's brilliant, and it's very easy to deploy indeed. And disaster recovery workloads, what can we protect? Everything on the screen basically. So it's the usual suspects basically. Anything running in those environments, basically we can protect in disaster recovery. It works really, really well. So essentially what we're going to do next is jump into Acronis Backup 12.5. I'll briefly show you the portal. What I'm going to do today is focus on the web console because it does give us more enhanced functionality, especially around workloads such as Office 365, and it just works really, really well. So please bear with me while I change my screen. I'm just going to briefly stop sharing, and then we'll be back in business. Okay, right, here we go again. Hopefully you can all see my screen. If there's any problems, please let me know. So essentially, this first screen here is the Acronis Backup screen. This is Acronis 12.5. This is the on-premise version. Very, very easy to see. The first screen you come into, basically it's a reporting screen. It shows you various information live about what the environment is doing. And these are all widgets, as what Acronis refers to as widgets. And these are, each and every one of them, you can configure to your heart's content. You can go completely mad. And all you need to do is click on Add Widget. And as you can see, there's lots here. And they're all presented in obviously the graphic of your choice, whether that's pie charts, tables, or graphs. So, for example, I can do monthly storage usage. And there we are. It's populated straight away. And there's various things I can do to configure that as well, basically. Lots and lots of options here as well. All of my storage devices can be listed here, and you can break them down, or you can accumulate all of them into one report. So lots of functionality there, and they're easy to configure. And you can email this report or download it in PDF or Excel format, as simple as that, really. There's some other options here as well. Alerts. This is just alerting for the platform. Activities in chronological order of all the activity on the platform. As you can see here, this is my name, this is me logging in, and you can search device names and started by here as well. So lots of information here as well. Reporting, lots of information, very, very important obviously for end users and partners. And there's templates you can utilize here as well. As you can see, all the information is listed, very similar format to the operations dashboard. The operations dashboard is more for NOCs and sort of IT managers, so they've got that real-time assessment of what's going on. This is more about how the reports that you can break down and send to individual users or IT managers or end users, basically. And it's as simple as configuring that. Essentially, you can determine the date range, you can give it a name specific to an end user, and you can also set it on Excel or PDF or both formats, basically. And it will send an email on schedule, and all you need to do is pop in the email address there. So lots of configurations around reporting. And as usual, with Acronis, it's nice and easy to navigate, and you can send the report directly via email there, or you can download it. So lots and lots of features within the reporting. And devices here, so these are all our protected workloads. I won't dwell on this too much because again, today my focus is going to be more around the web console because that's kind of the next step on from the on-premise version. But as you can see, lots of protected workloads here. And below all devices here, they're actually broken down into their sort of vendor subsets. So you have VMware. So these are all the VMware devices here. And it obviously by hovering over the top, it tells you what it is. And in this instance, it's a virtual machine. But again, you can obviously protect hosts and clusters, and it is broken down in there as well. And the same for Hyper-V, Microsoft Exchange, and so on. Backup plans, these are all the backup plans. The backup plans, basically, these are what we determine to what we're going to back up, how often we're going to back it up, how long we're going to keep the data, and where we're going to store that data. And as you can see here, there's many, we did touch earlier on about the options of where you can store that data. And as you can see here, there's lots and lots of backup plans and lots and lots of destinations here. So these are all the different types of locations that we can store our data. Cloud storage, SMB, so that's like a local share. Storage nodes here. So again, that can be a local share. It's just an Acronis product. and lots of options. Basically, it can be, as we said, any cloud and so on. And under here as well, there's some other options that we can utilize as well. This is actually to validate the backup as well. Again, we don't. Some vendors suffer big problems with corruption in their backups. We don't really suffer any of those issues. But here, if you wanted to, you can add what's called a validation job on there, and that will go through the backup and confirm 100% that there is absolutely no corruption. But the actual checks within the algorithm on the backups are TIBEX format, our backup archive, where we actually store the data, that has checking in it as well. So this is kind of, in my opinion, overkill, but for those that want to be completely thorough, that's something you can utilize. Cleanup options, again, nothing here in my particular tenant, but in terms of cleaning up, basically you can run cleanups, so you can remove legacy jobs and so on, and it will keep your database of backups nice and clean. You can run conversion to a VM, so you can select backups and convert those to virtual machines. So if you want to, you can use it as a migration tool, and VM replication as well. So basically, we can replicate machines in your environments and have them running in our cloud or in your environments as well. And backups, these are all the backups on this particular local platform. And these are all the locations that you can go to. And as we mentioned, we're agnostic around how you store them. We have tape here, and that's a local backup. We have cloud storage, all sorts of repositories here. And catalogs, this is actually for all the tapes, basically, and you can drill down through and catalog the tape backups there. And finally, settings here. This is all to do with users. So these are the administrators on the platform. This tells us the agents we're using. So these are the agents to protect the various workloads. And as you can see here, these are Microsoft. We've got Linux, and there's also Exchange, Office 365, and Windows operating systems used there as well. So that's kind of a useful overview on the agents that you're utilizing. Licenses, this just tells you the licenses that you're consuming on the platform. This tells us that we're licensed for 10 workstations and we're utilizing one of them. So again, very, very easy, very intuitive to understand. And this as well just illustrates how many servers we're protecting. So we're protecting 4 out of 9, for example, and 4 virtual hosts. SAN storage, again, there's nothing listed here, but essentially you can leverage, or especially with NetApp, you can utilize the native SAN snapshot technologies, so you remove the workload from the hypervisors. And storage nodes, this is basically an Acronis technology, leveraging what Acronis refers to as software-defined infrastructure. Again, software-defined infrastructure enables you, and if you're an Acronis customer, basically, you can utilize it free of charge to build clusters using proprietary servers. So you can get a collection of legacy servers and build a redundant cluster for storage. And that's in essence what they are. System settings, again, there's lots of configurations here that you could drill down into, but suffice, I won't today. We don't really have time for that. Tape management, very self-explanatory. We're breaking down, obviously, the tape devices and tape pools. That's obviously the tape pools and all these the media within them. Free tapes, for example, so scratch tapes, and you've got obviously Linux tape here. This is the tape utilized to back up a Linux server. And unrecognized tapes here as well. So these ones that just need to be imported and profiled ready for use. So that was kind of a whistle-stop tour of the on-prem version. But as I mentioned, I want to focus really on the web console and demonstrate how easy it is, for example, to onboard an Office 365 user. Now, with the web console, it is slightly different. It is actually based around our CyberCloud product, which is a separate product. That is purely cloud and has different functionality to the web console. But the web console does utilize a large portion of the CyberCloud technology whilst still having the 12.5 on-premise functionality. So it's kind of a hybrid model, but it works very well and gives you far more functionality than the on-prem version, especially around products such as Office 365. So under backup here, this will take us into the console shortly. And again, you'll have to, there's always a little bit of lag because this is actually a demo lab, so please forgive any lag. And again, as you can tell, it is slightly different in profile and how it's laid out, but again, it's the same clear, crisp presentation that we have with our on-premise version. So what would we do if we want to add a workload? My focus is on Office 365. So all I need to do to add a device to this, so currently I'm protecting a server, a Windows 2019 server and a Windows 7 workstation there. All I need to do to add a workload is open this tab here, and the immediate options are workstations, Windows and Macs. In terms of servers, that's Windows and Linux. Mobile devices, as I mentioned earlier on, it's iOS and Android. Virtualization hosts, that's VMware and Hyper-V and Virtuoso. And all three of those can basically be supported by agentless backups. So we have an agent, we have an appliance that sits in those environments, and basically anything within that environment, it can basically protect. So it works very, very well from an agentless perspective. We have a couple of other options down here as well. I just clicked on that by accident, incidentally. But right at the bottom, if I go back down, we have some options here. We have the offline installer. So if you wanted to use Active Directory and group policy, basically deploy the agents, that is what you would use. What you can also use is registration codes as well for those deployments, and the same with registration tokens as well. So rather than putting in your user credentials, you can actually just use tokens as well, and they can be set to expire. So after you've done the initial download and install, they will expire. But as I mentioned, my focus is on Office 365. So what I'm going to do is click on Office 365. And what we need to do here is select a global admin for our Office 365 account, which is this account here. All I need to do is click on that. It'll prompt me for my password, which I will enter here. And we have a permissions requested, a Microsoft permissions requested. I'll accept this as I do trust Acronis and Microsoft. And what this will now do is send us back to the console. And what will happen now is that it will actually start populating all of first of all, the Office 365 will be account will be registered into the Acronis portal. And then subsequently, we'll see all the users basically populating in the list. Takes a few seconds and then it'll populate. Sometimes it can be very, very quick. We are at the mercy of Microsoft as always, and it's worth bearing in mind that the Office 365 technology is cloud to cloud. So this is going from Microsoft straight to the Acronis cloud, or it can also be a partner cloud if it's available as well. What I'm going to do is select downloads here, and that's obviously slowing my system down there. I don't think the connection's especially good. There we are. So that will help. And away we go. So this is registering at the moment. He says, always when you need it, always a bit of lag there. So essentially what we should see is this being populated shortly. I can go back to activities and double check to see how we're getting on here. Calculating time left. Do apologize, guys. Normally it's considerably swifter than this. I think we're just on a bit of a go slow today, but we'll bear with it while it completes. There we are. We reckon 6 seconds. It feels like a lot longer than 6 seconds, but I'm sure it will get there. If it's going to take, there we are, 1 minute already. Shouldn't normally take this long. So what I will do is pause for a moment while that finishes, and demonstrate also how to configure a backup plan for devices. Normally it's a bit quicker, but we'll just jump around. It's fine, it's not a problem. So we'll go here. So if I wanted to protect a workload, all I need to do is click on backup, add a backup plan. I can quickly give it a name. By default, it'll default to something that it thinks is appropriate, like entire machine to cloud storage, which I'll leave for this. It's only a test. What to back up? We have a choice of entire machine, disk volumes, files, folders, or system state. I'm going to leave it as entire machine. If it was an application server, what I would do is select application backup. We have a choice of SQL, Exchange, and Active Directory here. all it will do is once we enable it, it will go away and poll the device to make sure that it's got the right credentials, for example, and it can actually talk to the device. And then we would have application backup enabled. So cloud storage, where to backup? By default, it's cloud storage. We have a choice of local folders and network folders as well. But what I'm going to do is something you ordinarily wouldn't do, which is select the local device. This local device could be a file share on a server, it could be a NAS, it could be anywhere, absolutely anywhere on your network, and the same for network folders as well. So by doing this, what it enables me to do is onward replicate that data to another location. So if I wanted to click on replicate backups, what this in essence means is that I have a copy of my data locally, and now I can also send another copy, and it doesn't have to be cloud storage. Again, we have the same options, so it could be another location, another client location, it could be another site, or it could just be another building on the same campus, or for this example, it's actually the Acronis cloud, which is cloud storage there. And the other options here, we have a schedule. Ordinarily, of course, you do weekly and daily backups. You wouldn't have it starting at 11:45 a.m. of course. You would probably have it running out of hours, and that's all I would do. There are some other options here as well for end users, especially for laptops, and you can dictate when those backups occur, so you can actually deny the service running if you want to save battery power, or when it's not on a network that you regard as secure, and you can check the device IP address as well. So lots of good functionality there for laptop users. Now, how long do we want to keep the data? Locally, if you're leveraging cloud storage and you want offsite backups, you can just have a week or a month, and that enables you to have very quick recoveries of servers and other key data locally, obviously because it would be done over a LAN or by tape, for example. But when you're replicating data, you can do this for long-term storage. So whereas obviously you would store data in an archive from Iron Mountain, for example, you can just stretch out the retentions here, and there's actually no limits. We have people using 12-year retentions for key legal data, for example, and there's enormous flexibility around how you retain the data. So you can have two separate retention periods, and literally this will run after that backup job completes. So once that backup job completes, the replicate task here will just start sending that data to the cloud in this instance, or as we said, it could be another location on your estate. And encrypting of backups as well. Obviously, this is part of our cybersecurity messaging. What you can do here is basically select 256.192.128 AES encryption, and you just enter a password there. I won't for the purpose of this demonstration, but once you've enabled it, basically nobody can do anything with this backup unless they enter the encryption key. And the encryption password is actually a hash of the password, so we don't store the password anywhere. It's a SHA-256 hash of password. So that's how easy it is to protect a workload. So I'm rather hoping, if I go back to Office 365 now, that we have, yes, there we are. The activity has completed. Now, if I quickly check activities, we'll have a look just to make sure how long that took. It took 3 minutes in the end. So it took a little while, longer than ordinarily we'd expect. But with Office 365, what we can do is protect SharePoint, we can protect user mailboxes and OneDrive as well. And it's very easy to configure. Ordinarily, as I said, this just takes a matter of minutes. Okay, so how do we protect these? Obviously, I've just talked about backup plans, for example. All I need to do is click on Group Backup, and this is mailboxes to cloud storage, which is great. I want to protect mailboxes. We have a choice of mailboxes and OneDrive, and I'll go through that phase shortly as well. By default, it's cloud storage, and as I said, it's either Acronis or partner storage that can be stored there. Schedule, it's limited to once a day, and it's done for good reason. Microsoft is very, very sensitive about people pulling data from their environment. So by limiting the backups to once a day, and also what we do is spread them out over a 24-hour period as well, that account isn't suddenly having a big draw of data from Microsoft Cloud, because in that instance, they will throttle you. And obviously, if you had multiple backups occurring on the schedule, you could end up with situations where you're having backups not completing. So we're kind of mandated by Microsoft on that one. In terms of how long do we keep the data, retentions apply as usual. And again, there's no limits around this at all. You can go to many years, 12 years, as I said. We have people protecting our data for 12 years plus, and you can utilize those same retentions. Archive mailboxes, yes, we want to protect our archive mailboxes, and encryption as well. And again, if you enable encryption, that's the same format as before, 128, 192, or 256 encryption as well. So all we need to do is click on apply there. And this will now schedule backups for all of these users for mailboxes. Any second now, we will see this change to schedule backups. And I can add some columns here as well. Obviously, OneDrive use space and cloud space used. So that gives me more options, and the backup accounts used as well. So this means I've got lots and lots of information here that I can use to reference and understand how my backups are being protected. Obviously, it lists here by user how much OneDrive is being used. And obviously, it's quite small amounts as it's a demo account. But if you're talking about users with terabytes or hundreds of megs, it would show up here as well. So all I need to do, I'm going to demonstrate the granularity of email backups. All I'm going to do is click on apply here. There we are, and click run now. And what this will do is this will bypass the normal scheduling of backup. So instead of them being scheduled to run throughout the day, I just say, right, this user is important, I want to run it now. So I can do it that way as well. And what it will do is once it's complete, it will enable me to have a look around the mailbox of this particular user. So whilst that is running, what I'm going to do is click a group backup plan for, okay, so it's grumbling about the quota. I incidentally don't have enough Office 365 seat licenses, but it's actually done the backup for this user as well. So it's warning me around that. So there we are. So if I go back here and look at my backups, backup succeeded for this user on September 24th at 11:44 a.m. So again, quotas are enabled on the platform, so you do need to be mindful of the licenses. Where I've tried to do a group backup, basically it's saying I've exceeded my amount of licenses, which is why it hasn't run, essentially. So I'll need to obviously go away and purchase some more licenses. So all I'm going to do now is have a look at the data within Adele's mailbox. So all I'm going to do, ordinarily you would see multiple recovery points here. Obviously, if you've got backups that have been occurring for weeks or months or years, there'll be lots of recovery points here. As this is just newly added, all I can do here is click on recover this one. Now, this can be entire mailbox, so I can recover the entire mailbox back to Adele, or I can just, if I'm looking for a particular email message, I can just jump on, let's go and have a look at the emails. Have a look, click on, oh, she hasn't got many emails, has she? There we are. So nice and easy. The last backup shows 2 emails, and as you can see, this is a reflection of the inbox. And here are the 2 emails that she has. Now, this is the email I want to have a look at, for example. So I can double click on there, and what this enables me to do is have a look at this email and identify if I had a user with lots and lots of emails. I can, and I wasn't sure of the content. Either the user themselves can do this, or if you've got an admin team, for example, with an end user, they could also do this. And if you confirm that yes, this is the correct email I want to recover, you can basically just click on the attachments here and actually download the file directly here. Or you can do send as an email here, or you can just recover to the original location or custom location. So lots and lots of flexibility around Office 365 really, and that's for SharePoint sites and group mailboxes and pretty much all aspects of Office 365. Now that can include Teams data as well. At the moment we don't have a separate Teams backup, but by proxy, because of the data that we do capture, we capture most of the content of Teams as well. The only thing we don't capture for Teams, for example, would be private chats and so on. So lots of functionality around Office 365. And as you can see, it's very, very easy indeed to configure, set up, and run and recover data. So from a backup perspective, the last thing I want to talk to you about is active protection. And again, this is very much the cyber protection angle of the platform. Here, this is how we configure it. So this device already has a backup plan. So what I'm going to do is click on edit, and this will be added to the backup plan. And what we can do is determine the settings around active protection, how it protects our environment. First option is stop the process, notify only, stop the process, or revert using cache. Notify only for me is a rather dangerous one. It just tells you you're having a ransomware attack, but people do have requested this, so that's why that option exists. As a minimum, I would suggest stop the process. What this will do is stop the attack in its tracks, but obviously in between detection and stopping the service, you may have had some files encrypted. The option with stop the process would be to recover those from a backup, or the king of options here is revert using cache. And what this will do is stop the process and revert any changes made between detection and stopping the services back, and completely nullify the attack, which is truly awesome. And it's obviously the setting to go for. Trusted processes. The trusted processes themselves, yeah, this can be any processes that you may think have a conflict. We personally haven't found anything in the Acronis nation, as it were, to impact that. Harmful processes. These can be processes that you've identified that you want to make sure are identified. Folder exclusions. You can obviously exclude folders from active protection. Self-protection. This is just an option basically that prevents any service disabling the Acronis service, which is common now in ransomware attacks, in that they will basically disable any services that are running to disable or detect or prevent a ransomware attack. So the thinking being they stop the service, run the ransomware attack, and that's obviously impacting your backups and your live information. And it's also worth noting that there is a ransomware attack strategy out there whereby the attackers will actually encrypt your data for months on end without actually your knowledge and you actually identifying anything, and it will time out after. It could be months, it could be 6 months, and of course the problem is if you don't have active protection or technology just such as this, and you go to access your backups and they have been encrypted, you're in a whole world of trouble. How far do you go back before you deem it as a non-risk? Your data is key, so it's obviously a very, very bad thing indeed. So hence why self-protection is enabled. There's some options here as well. Backups, do you want to protect your backups? Of course you do, why wouldn't you? Crypto mining protection, yes, I'll enable that. That protects against crypto mining activity where they just siphon off a percentage of your resources, and you want that drive protected as well. So yeah, click yes to all of that, and that will basically enable active protection on that device. So what I'd like to do now is actually show you what a ransomware attack looks like. And what we have here is a PC running active protection, a server, sorry, running active protection. And what we have here are what I regard as my critical data. And what we have here is ransomware. Now they haven't meddled around with this today. Ordinarily it's WannaCry, but they've changed it. So what I'm going to do now is hopefully run this, and you can see encrypting files. And look, and there we are. It's changed it to give me all your money, basically, which is no good at all, of course. And all of a sudden, there we go. Active protection has kicked in. It's detected the attack, and it's also reverted the files. Very, very quick and easy indeed. And that's what active protection does for you. And as I said, highly regarded in the industry, and certainly a feature that you really want to push with your end users and partners. Great functionality. And that's as easy as that demo is, really. As you can see, very, very straightforward. Encrypts the files, and then they're returned to their original state by cache. So great functionality there with active protection. So that kind of covers the backup element of our demonstration today. So what I'm going to do now is jump into another console to demonstrate disaster recovery. And disaster recovery option is still contained under backup. And disaster recovery is something that people think is this expensive option that is unaffordable and so on and so forth. It just isn't at all. It's very easy service to enable within your portal once you've got that license. Basically all you need is an entire machine backup, and this one's errored because it was switched off, hence the error, so there's nothing to worry about. But what we have here are a number of servers that I'll be looking to protect. So how do we actually go about that? We have a tab here that's slightly different. Once disaster recovery is enabled, you'll end up with cloud recovery site and disaster recovery options here. And what we have here is one that I've already protected. Now, for this example, what I'm going to do is I've enabled disaster recovery for this option. I'll show you how we do it whilst this one is booting up. But in essence, this one is there. It's dormant at the current time. So in my live environment, basically, this server, W2K8R2DT, has gone offline for some reason. So all I need to do is click on disaster recovery, and I have these options basically. And I'll show you how to configure these momentarily. But at the moment, I've got two choices, failover or test failover. For this, I'm just going to click on test failover. So what I intend to do is test the failover and the integrity of this machine when it boots up in our cloud. And I've got a number, these are all the recovery points. So these are all the backups for this server. And I could go back to August the 27th, for example. I'm going to stick with the latest backup, which was yesterday's. So click on test failover. And what this will do now is actually spin this disaster recovery server up in the Acronis cloud. We'll come back to this in a moment, but this ordinarily takes about a minute or so. So all I need to do to protect a device is go back to all devices, select a server I want to back up. Oh, there we are, it's back online now. So I'm going to select this server here. And this has an entire machine backup to cloud storage. So I click on disaster recovery here. And essentially, this is the moment your client rings up and says, I want to protect that server, DGI, W2K16 files. I need disaster recovery for that machine. So we've got the green light. We're going to enable it, basically. So we've got an entire machine backup already. The first configuration we have is basically how many virtual cores do we want to give it and how much RAM. And there is an over and above ordinary licensing cost to disaster recovery, it should be said. You do need to use some of the storage either in your partner cloud or the Acronis cloud. So if you had a 20 gig server, you would need 20 gig in either your partner cloud or the Acronis cloud to run it. Or cost per hour per compute point is 1, for example, here, or 2. Sorry, I jumped off. Here, 8 gig of RAM, and I'm going to go for this one. 8 gig of RAM, 2 virtual cores, and that's going to cost me 4 compute points per hour. So currently, we're going to be using the Acronis cloud, and until, I do need to correct myself there, the Acronis cloud is the only option available at the moment until we have a new version of our CyberCloud product that comes out in October, and then we'll be able to utilize partner clouds as well, hopefully at that point. So currently it is just the Acronis cloud for disaster recovery. For everything else, you can utilize partner clouds, but not disaster recovery at the current time. IP address and production network. So this is the IP address and the production network of this server. So obviously it knows that from the backup agent that's on the device itself. We can assign a test IP address as well for a sandbox approach. So that means we can access it whilst it's testing in a test failover environment. And we can also give it internet access as well, which means we can obviously get access to it from the outside world. So for example, a developer wanted to go back in time to a specific box based on the profile of that box, and he was doing work, we had files on it, he can spin that server up in the cloud, for example. And I click on done. So that's how quick, there you go, that's how quick it is to enable it. So what this process is enabling this disaster recovery cloud server in our cloud, basically. So it reserves the footprint of the data. So it reserves storage space on our SAN storage. And then it reserves the CPU and the RAM as well, basically. So that's all done in a matter of seconds. And immediately we have the option of click on test failover. So just to prove the theory, I'll click on test failover. And again, we've got all these recovery points, but I'm going to pick one from I'll go August 28th. There we are, and click on that one. And that's now going to spin that server up in our cloud as well. As you can see from getting the green light to protect that server, if you cut out my waffle and just obviously the configurations you've got to make, You can see it just takes a matter of minutes, and that's it really. And as we can see, this is the cloud recovery site. So this is where we get to see the specific activity of the disaster recovery servers themselves. Here we have the one that I've just created. This is the one that was dormant that I enabled earlier on. And the options here are, because it's in test failover, to click on the console. And what this will enable me to do, it's still waiting for that. Ordinarily, you'll get the console for this server. It's still having a think, obviously. But ordinarily, you can click on console once it's finished doing all its checks and configuring its drivers. Because our cloud obviously uses different drivers too. This is actually a server in a Hyper-V environment. We use a KVM-based technology in our cloud, and essentially they're not compatible. So it takes a little while for it to modify the drivers, and whilst it's doing that, console's not available. But once it has finished doing those checks and tests, it will enable me to log on and check the console. As for this server here, you can see it's going through its various steps. It's running a failover test. So it's created the cloud server, which we did a few minutes ago. Now it's running the failover test. And as you can see here, it's the various stages. And what it's saying is that we've consumed a minute already, so it's almost there. And then we'll be able to jump onto that server as well. So hopefully by now, this has finished doing its thing. Yep, there we are. And what I can do now is send Control-Alt-Delete. And brilliantly, here we go. So what I can do now is log on to this server. Now it's finished doing its drivers and working its magic. And there we are. So you can see how quick and easy it is to enable disaster recovery server in the cloud. And as you can see, it's got its, that's that little icon there. I'm chasing it across the screen. The little white icon here is the actual backup monitor. So that is all, everything has come up, all the services have come up. Whilst it's running in disaster recovery, it should be noted that you can't actually do backups. But the premise is, of course, this is a disaster recovery function. You get it up and you spin it up as quickly as possible, and then run this workload. And then should you need to fail back, so when your disaster is over, we run a process called fail back. And what happens there is that the system has a backup taken of the disaster recovery server in its state, and then returns that. We recover that back into your live environment. And that's basically how the failback process works. So it is from a beginning to end solution. And the thing is, it's very, very cheap, and it's very, very effective. It's very easy to implement. And as you can see here, this server, the one I created earlier on, again, that has done its rebooting. So it's aligned its drivers for our platform as well. And essentially, guys, that is disaster recovery. The options around this are absolutely huge. They are. It works supremely well, easy to implement, and easy to manage, and easy to fail back. And you do not need any hardware on site for this. It's all done in our cloud. The only thing that needs configuring at the current time is the VPN settings. And basically what we have, we do need to utilize a Hyper-V and VMware environment. And what we have is something called the VPN appliance. And that just sits in one of those two environments, Hyper-V or VMware, and it creates a layer 2 connection to our cloud. What happens if you lose that environment? How do you access the cloud? Essentially, in that situation, you'd be running all of the workloads in our disaster recovery cloud. And what you would do is simply for end users, laptop users, and workstation users, whether they were remote or in a serviced office accessing the environment, all you do is download the OpenVPN configuration and use the OpenVPN utility to access those servers in our cloud. How easy is that, guys? And that's kind of the disaster recovery element complete now as well. You can always contact me as well. My email address, if you do have any questions, you can contact me directly. As I said, my name is Damon Giddings, and my Acronis email address is Damon, D-A-M-O-N, .Giddings, G-I-D-D-I-N-G-S, at acronis.com. And that's just more for technical clarifications or any other questions you may have had about our demo today. I'd just like to say, guys, thank you very much for joining today. Hopefully I look forward to all of you sort of engaging with Acronis and hopefully working as a partner or as an end user. Lovely. Thanks so much. Bye, guys.